And so today we are going to cover a very important chapter of the Bhagavad Gītā. This is leading to the philosophy of bhakti. Bhakti, as some of you may know, is what we also call Krishna consciousness, or the science of pure loving devotion. And so let's see. I want to put... So one of the things that we see in chapter 7 is it brings out a few things. First thing is it's dealing with epistemology. How do we know things? In the Vedic culture, actually, let me just do a little invocation. And hold on. I'll bring this up. I wanted to do some chanting. So if everyone would repeat after me. Everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the Bhagavad Gītā is a great science dealing with consciousness, the self, time, the supreme, activity and its resultant reactions. So many different things are covered in the Bhagavad Gītā. But Bhagavad Gītā is like a delicious veggie burger. The heart of it is actually in the middle of the juicy, the clean vegetarian flesh of the middle is the beyond burger of the middle is the center chapters, chapters 7 through 12. And so in the Vedic culture, there is a description of all different forms of pramana. Pramana, it means how we know things. Prama means correct cognition. And pramana means that which leads to correct cognition. And so the Vedas describe 10 different ways we can understand something. But then out of these 10, there are 3 that are central, and actually the other 7, they all boil down into 3. So you have what is called pratyaksha. Prati means, like you have the word peri in the root in English, around. Prati means around. Aksha means the eyes. So that which is brought around our senses, that we put our attention to. Basically, sensual perception. It's one way we know something. Of course, as a child, we are taught, don't just believe what you see. We have a tendency to automatically believe what we see. And we have to be taught, no, there's some other things you actually have to have. You need something called anuman, and you also need shabda. So anuman means logic. Like you may see the sun, but if you don't employ anuman, if you don't employ logic, then the sun is quite small. So we're asked not to just believe what we see, and we see, like in magic, that's kind of the principle that we see something, and our processing of it leads to an incorrect perception of what happened. And so we're told, no, that's not really what happened. It looked like the lady was sawed in half. She was not sawed in half. And don't just believe what you see. So you have what is called pratyaksha. The middle you have anuman. Anuman is not an independent form of information. Anuman means logic. Logic doesn't give you perception of something. Logic only is a tool to analyze what you perceive. It's not revealing anything. Logic is only applied to something you've already seen before. For example, if you've seen or heard that there is smoke when there's a fire, then you have a logical inference that if I see smoke, there's probably a fire. So it has something that preceded that understanding. It's seeing something that happens repeatedly produces a type of logical conclusion, or hearing something that, oh, fire, when there's smoke, there's fire. You either heard it or saw it before. So logic doesn't reveal something on its own. It's a tool in between. And the last one is called Shabda, testimony. Now, testimony is the most useful tool for something that is beyond our perception. And testimony is something that we learn, like, I could show you, I have a bunch of slides related to this, but I'm just going to go off the cuff. But if you've seen the painting of Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel, and you see there's apparently his God, and he's reaching out with his finger. Now, how do we know that it's Michelangelo? How do we know he's Italian? How do we know which year? We could try to, with logic, analyze the painting and say, well, the art style is like this, and it's from this particular year. But it always comes down to some information that we've heard before, testimony. It's not just logic. We've heard that this art style is from this particular period. If we wanted to know that Michelangelo had blue eyes or he liked to eat granola for breakfast, we're not going to get that by looking at the painting itself. Actually, 80%, 90%, probably even more of the time that we're learning in a science class something, how are we learning? We're learning through something called Shabda. Shabda means testimony. We're not doing the experiments. We're being told information. We're hearing from a reliable authority on some subject. And so each of these things have their domain. They have their strengths and their weaknesses. And they have, for example, we discussed some of the weaknesses of direct perception. Actually, the human condition, there is 4 descriptions of what causes us to have imperfect perception in the human condition. One of them is called Karnapatava. Karnapatava means our senses are not perfect. If we close our eyes, we're not able to see the molecular structure of our eyelids. We're not able to see the inner workings of the cells that are on our eyelids. We can't see so close, nor can we see so far. So that is just the physical side of the eyes. That's called Karnapatava. But then there is something else called Brahma. Brahma means when our senses are working, our consciousness is attentive, but still we don't see what is really there. So one example Srila Prabhupada gives is we look in the river and we find a shell in the water and we think, oh my God, I found a silver ring, or I found gold. When we go and we pull it out, oh, it's not gold, it's not silver. Sometimes, have any of you you're driving and then there's like a plastic bag that floats across and you're like, oh my God, there's a rat, or something. Because the brain takes in what it assumes it's to be. Then your eyes see something, but based on the consciousness and what the consciousness is being fed, then we come up with different conclusions. Like, for example, you've seen the example of it looks like a duck and it looks like a rabbit, this image. And they ask people at the zoo, is this a duck or is this a rabbit? Now, when they ask during Easter time, they ask a child, every child who sees this picture says, that's a rabbit. So our consciousness affects our perception. So Brahma means, Brahma means that's when we are looking at something, we're attentive, but there is an error in the processing that happens. And so Have any of you heard of David Robinson's book, The Expectation Effect? It's amazing. David Robson. Amazing. It's so far out about how consciousness affects the body, how perception affects the body. We find that if a person thinks that they're getting morphine, it's not just a psychogenic response that the person actually is relieved from pain. But there's actually chemical responses that happen in the body if someone is given a fake morphine shot. That if you give them a drug that's anti-morphine, then the pain will come back. It's as if the medication is within the body. You have the many examples of the two daughters who lifted a tractor and to release their father from underneath. How the body can, the consciousness can change how the body is affected. Of course, these girls, they cracked some of their teeth, they ripped their tendons, but they had the strength to move a tractor. And that's where the whole kind of comic theme of the Hulk came from, is these stories of people manifesting immense strength in real life situations. And so David Robinson's book deals with a lot about the physical effects, the effects of perception, all these things. So these are two difficulties we have in understanding things. And the next one is called, you have Karna Patava, defects of the senses, Brahma, the errors in processing what our senses might work perfectly, but what we process might not be correct. Then there is what is called pramada. Pramada means when we're not being attentive. And Srila Prabhupada's example for that was, because we're not attentive, we don't realize that our consciousness is different from the body. We think we are this body. And the last one is called vipralipsa. That despite these defects, we stand and we present ourselves as great authorities of truth, even though we have so much defects in our cognition. And so when it comes to discussing things beyond our senses, like if I want to know what happens in Japan, I cannot use pratyaksha. I cannot use my sensual immediate perception. Unless we are all flat earthers, we can't get on the roof of the building with a telescope and see what's happening in Japan. We must rely on what is called Shabda testimony. Yes?
Is sense perception in the same vein as your psychic perception?
Yes, so there's internal and external. Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that's the mind is called the sixth sense. Manasashtani indriyani prakritishtani karshi. The san indriya, the sixth sense. So the internal and external senses. Our mind perceives like they did the scar experiment. You for the Stanford scar experiment, where they had people, they had like a film crew that does the makeup, and they did a really professional, it looks like a real scar, a very horrible looking scar on a person's face. And they told the person, we want you to go apply for jobs. We set up job interviews for you, and we want you to tell us what kind of prejudice are you being dealt with because of this scar on your face. And then before they went out, they said, "But we have to fix some of the makeup right now." And what they did is actually in that so-called fixing, they wiped off the entire scar. And then the persons would go out and they would say, "Oh, this person is, treating me hostilely because of my scar, and this person is prejudiced." So what they were seeking is what they found. They're seeking, they're in the position of seeing themselves as victims, and they saw themselves as being victims of prejudice that wasn't even around because they did not have a scar on their face, but because that was what filled their consciousness, that colored their perception in their mind and in their senses. So, because Shabda is most important when it comes to learning about things that happen at different times, different places, and knowledge that is timeless, it is the most useful tool of understanding things of those subjects. But all three of these things are actually used. For example, if you have a testimony, you have some piece of information, it is my son's drawing of the MTA map. Now, he is an amazing artist, but this time he drew the map at the age of 4. And Bronx is in the middle, Brooklyn is in the north, Queens is in the south, and Staten Island is in the east. And all the lines and numbers, everything, nothing makes sense. So this is information that has been given to you, but it doesn't have a logical coherence to it. So because it doesn't make sense, you're not obliged to engage with it. But if you find something that does make sense, I do give you a map that makes sense, your participation with that information, like if you open the Google Maps, you open the MT app, City Mapper, whatever you use, and you engage with that, having not yet been to the desired destination, then your engagement with that app is called faith. That is called Shraddha. It is, generally we think the word faith has something to do with religion, but if you're trusting information that has not yet been verified by your direct experience, that is called faith. Yes?
What if it makes sense to no one else but just the reader?
Can you give an example?
So I'm reading or analyzing information, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me. I'm about to apply what I'm reading right now, and if I try to explain it to somebody else, or if I show it to somebody else, they don't understand it. But I'm here. I'm the only one who can understand it, and I try to apply it.
Yeah,
how do you view that?
So the question was, so there's some people maybe watching online. How do we view, the question is, what if it's logical and coherent to you, but to others it's not logical and coherent? So if it makes sense to you, then you can engage with it. But then the next step is, does it actually produce the result? For example, I might have a map that says if you take the A or C train from West 4th, it will take you to Broadway Lafayette. Then it will take you to, eventually it ends up at J Street Metrotech, and then it takes you to Hoyt Skimmerhorn. And from Hoyt Skimmerhorn, you can go to the Brooklyn Temple.
Even on these trips, people have had doubt.
So there is some trust in information, but when it does take you to Broadway Lafayette, when it does take you to J Street Metrotech, then you're getting what is called nishta. It is in its experienced form of trust. You may not have a full understanding of the destination, but there is some conclusive information that you've received because it's okay. I don't know about the last stop, but I've experienced A, B, C, and D. Now we should understand what are the markers of conclusive information. Like, for example, one may easily accept something out of eagerness to belong to something, and they might experience what they think are markers of truth. So there's some markers of truth that are there when it comes to spirituality, and we'll get into that. But before we get into that, I would like to just recite some verses from the Bhagavad Gītā, and we will kind of go over them quickly. So I just want to see if I can play this Tampura. So this is chapter 7. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Maya Shaktamana Partha Yogam Yunjan Madashaya Ashamshayam Shamagramam Yatashka Shishi Tachinu. Jnanate ham sabhi jnana midam bhakshami sheshata yachkatvani habyo nachkatamamma vishishyate Manushanam sahastreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschin mambeti tatpataha. So these are the first three verses. And so Krishna is saying, this process of hearing uh, from spiritual authority, that's how we learn something that's beyond this world. It has to come from a source that is supposedly beyond this world. Just like you get how do you learn the MT route? We have to get a map that's supposedly from the MTA and see, does it actually make sense? And then he explains, Manushanam sahastreshu kaschid yatiti siddhaya. Out of many thousands of people, hardly is anyone actually seeking for truth. Most are seeking for what's right in front of their faces, just the instant gratification of this world. And anybody heard of the author C.S. Lewis? Yeah. C.S. Lewis, nice. Yeah. What is he known for? Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe. That's a nice one. He also has a really cool book called The Screw Tape Letters. And the Screw Tape Letters is a senior demon, and he's teaching his nephew, a junior demon. And in the Christian concept, a demon is some kind of ethereal being that gets in your consciousness and kind of directs you away from God. So you would say like Maya or illusion, something that keeps you in illusion. And so the senior demon was telling the junior demon, he said, my dear Wormwood, don't be so naive to think that argument is a good tool to keep people away from God. Because argument and logic actually inspires inquiry. What is reality? So don't let people get into that. That's not good. Don't let them get into science of who am I, what's life about. Rather, he said, he described to his nephew, he said, once I had one of my patients, an atheist, and I saw he was in the library and he was studying. And almost 20 years of my work was almost undone because he started to think very deep. And he said to the person, the demon said into his ear, this is very important knowledge. Maybe you should go back to it after you had a good breakfast. It's so important. Better you go back later and take care. And he said, once I said that, the guy got up to the door and was ready to go find something to eat, and he never went back to it again. And so this is the idea, is that the consciousness directed towards our immediate gratification brings us away from deep introspection, and it brings us away from divinity. And so Krishna says, out of thousands of people, hardly one is actually seeking perfection. And out of thousands of those who are seeking perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. But in the next verses, he starts to explain how we can see him everywhere. So would you like to hear those verses?
Yes.
Okay. Bhumirapo nalo vayu kammanarbudirevacha ahankara ityame bina prakritir ashtada apareyamitastvanyam prakritim vidhi me param jiva bhuta mahavaho yayadam dharyate jagat etadyonini bhutani matstani padaya aham krishnasya jagata prabhava pailastata mata partaram nanya kintid asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam proktam sutre managanaiva. Rasoham apsu kunteya prabhashmi shashashuryoho pranava sarva vedeshu shabdake parushamnishu punyagandham prativim tachcha tejas chasmi vibhavasho jivanam sarva bhuteshu tapaschasmi tapashvishu Bijamam sarva bhutanam vidhi parta sanatanam buddhi buddhitam asmi tejas vanamaham balam balavatam chaham kamaraga vivarjitam dharma viruda bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava ye shaiva satvika bhava rajashashtamashashjaye mata ete tatanvidhi maite ete shute mai Chibir Gunair Bhabir Ebim Sarvamadam Jagat Mohitam Nabijanati Lokamam Ajamabiyam. And here's the final verse of that section. Daiveshu Gunamayi Mama Maya Dhurataya Mameva Ye Prapadyanti Maya Etantarantite. So actually this chapter, the flow of the conversation can be put into an acronym. So the first three verses is head. Actually, the whole acronym is head. But the first three verses is about hearing. That hearing from a divine source is the most useful tool to find what is divinity. And so the next letter in the acronym is E, and that is for energies. And so Krishna is describing how we can see divinity through his energies. So first he says there are 8 forms of material energy. There's earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the gross elements. And then you have mind, intelligence, and the false ego. These are the subtle elements. Yes?
What is ether, and is it proportional to gravity?
Good question. So actually the elements are not as simplified as they may seem, because you can actually go on an atomic level. And earth doesn't mean soil, it means something that has mass. Even Appa, the cohesive quality is found between the proton and neutron. That's another one that's called Appa, or water, because water is that cohesive quality. You have what is air is the principle of movement. You even have the electron, which is moving. You have the any type of energy transference or fire. And the space that is contained in. Now, ether is called space. However, it's a little bit of a question, because not only in Vedic culture, but also in Western science, it is a question. Sometimes it is led more one to believe that space is nothing, but sometimes it's more, modern science comes to see space as some kind of substratum, that it is like a substance upon itself. There is a verse I read recently that to find God without love is like trying to fold space upon itself, basically saying it's impossible. So space is related to the element of sound, and the scientifically minded person will say, wait a minute, doesn't sound require oxygen? But we find that sound in its 4th stage is what's coming out of the 4th chakra, the throat chakra, as intelligent sound. But there are actually 4 stages of sound. And so you can not use your lips, and you can hear sound. You can produce what are called thoughts. And someone who loves you and is dear to you and is close to you can probably hear when there's something going on too much in your head. And they're like, what's going on? I can feel your thoughts just rumbling. I can hear that sound. They had a most popular podcast in the world. It's called the Telepathy Tapes, about nonverbal autistic children who are able to, they did intense tests where they put them in one room, and the parent or the social worker, someone who works with them, in the other room, and they were able to recite what is the 4 or 5 digit number, what is the 10-letter word what is the made up word, spell out the made up word that they're looking at in the other room. And even if they got this 30% of the time, that would be miraculous. But they're getting it 100% of the time right. And so they developed what is called this ability to hear the subtle sound, to pick up the subtle sound that is coming out of the consciousness. So there are many subtle sciences like this, but unless someone is, Albert Einstein said, more important from information is imagination. Meaning that all these scientific discoveries are often when someone kind of gives up their dogmatic boundary of their views and is able to see things beyond what they perceive possible. For example, here's a question. Does energy come out of the eyes? Does it come out of the eyes? Modern science would say, no, it doesn't come out of the eyes. Then the question is brought up, one scientist asks, well, why is it pretty much anyone in this world has had the experience of the feeling of being stared at? And that intention can actually be measured because brainwaves are actually measurable, like a mechanical instrument. These are measurable material things that you can actually measure, but nobody would even bother measuring it or looking at it because of a kind of dogmatic view. This is the way it is. I know how it is. And so they found out, this one scientist found out that, you know how we used to have in the 80s or 90s, you had the clapper, you can turn off the lights. And it didn't work so well because then it's like, any little sound is like making the lights going all crazy and stuff. But he realized you could make something called the stare, and he's like, look at the light switch, because there is a type of frequency and intensity of brainwaves that follows a line of vision. Therefore, you can be 50 yards away from somebody and know when that person's looking at you, despite you not being able to see those millimeter tiny, like you can't see how those eyes are specific. There's no way you can tell physically with the sight that you have a sensation that this person is looking. So something in your physiology is picking up the intensity and frequency of those brain waves. So there's a lot of subtle sciences there that people won't pick up out of a type of dogmatism, scientism, a religious view of their own kind of scientific background. For example, the United States Army hired Native American trackers because they were so efficient in being able to track people and being able to sense danger. Like, this spidey sense, You could go up to them with, I don't know if you ever watched anime, they talk about like that, the violent intention, lethal, like he had that violent vibe. So they could go to them at night with a knife and they would immediately wake up. Now, to join the army, they cut off their hair. That was kind of the standard. They have the army haircut. And they found out that they weren't able to do the things that they were able to do prior to having their hair cut because there was something to do with the hair and energy and things like that. But of course, this sounds all like a pseudoscience, but these are things or something that can be tested and studied. So Krishna says, Bhumir Apo, the earth, water, fire, air, ether. These are the 5 gross elements, and then you have the 3 subtle elements. You have your mind, your intelligence, and your ahamkar, sense of identity. These are the subtle elements. So you have an astral body and a physical body. This astral body may even times experience life outside of the physical body in a dream. Or you may even, in a surgery, say what's happening during the surgery, although your brain was inactive at that time. But you said, this was the conversation, this is what was said, this was the change in the procedure, this mistake happened. And the doctor says, well, I think you're imagining all that, or maybe you heard that subconsciously, but physically the brain was not even active at that point. The person could have been, clinically speaking, brain dead. The parts of their brain that deal with those kind of subjects were not even active. And the person has a perception of these things, out of body experience. So that's called the subtle body, astral body. So he says, so you have the gross elements, Those are the material energies, but Krishna says there's another energy of mind, a superior energy, and that is called the jiva, the soul. And the soul and this material body, um, aprayamatasthanyam prakritim me param jiva mahabaho yedam etad yonini bhutani. So we're born into this world, basically encased in a gross physical body, subtle body, like putting a latex glove over the hand and a boxing glove over that. The latex glove is like our subtle body, and the boxing glove is the gross body, and we are like the hand within. Etad yonini bhutani sarvaniti padayam Krishna sajagata prabhava playasada. And Krishna says, I'm the source of both of these. Mata paratam nanyat kinchit asti dananchaya. So one is encouraged to see something that is not easily seen. You cannot see the string on the pearl necklace, but by implication you can understand that it's there. Sutre, the thread, managanaiva, behind the pearl necklace. Sutre managan. Ras, and so he says, here are some ways you can experience my excellence. I'm the pure taste within water. So whenever you have refreshing water, you think this is an expression of God's divinity and His energy. Raso hamapsukantev, prabhashmi shashishurayo. I'm the light of the sun and the moon. Pranava sarvavedishu. I am the Om within all the Vedas. I am the Shabdake, the sound that's within ether that we discussed earlier. And I am the ability in man. We find that people that have talent often become very talented. They say, I'm actually not talented. I feel myself a secretary, and it is flowing through me. I'm not the author of my own talent. It is coming to me. So Krishna says, I am the ability within man, or the abilities within humankind. I'm behind that. Punya Gandha Pratigam Cha. I'm the original fragrance of the earth. Now, we have all these wonderful fragrances you find. Let me see. I have this here. Everyone can take a little bit. This is from a temple in India. Okay. 108 oils offered to the Lord. You can just take a little swipe on your wrist and then pass it to the next person. There's 108 oils that have been offered to Krishna. Now, if you think of these different flowers, what is a flower? It is nothing but dirt. You take dirt and then you put a particular type of technology into the soil that extracts particular elements. That technology is called a seed. You put this technology within the soil, it extracts a particular type of elements. That's why monocrop is considered bad, because it's the same seed is taking the same elements out of that soil. If we have different seeds, then it's a balance of different types of elements that are being taken from the soil. But it's just the fragrance, the flower, is just a transformation of soil. That's all it is. So punya gandham vitivam cha. Tejas chasmi vibhavasho. And for those who are watching online, there you go. You can imagine some beautiful fragrance. Did you like the smell? Yes. So Tejas chasmi vibhavasho. I am the power within fire. The light, Tejas chasmi vibhavasho. Jiva, the life of behind the living. Jivanam chababhute. Shabda, no. And then he says, Bhalam balavatam chaham. I am the strength that is devoid of passion and desire, just pure strength, that is devoid of egotism. And I am that sexual life that is for producing spiritually conscious children. I'm the pure expression of lust. That's Bhagavad Gītā 7:11. What is it? Balam balavadam chaham kamaraga vivarjitam dhamavrude bhuteshu kamosmi bharatashva. He says, actually, know that all states of being, whether they're in the mode of goodness, whether in sattva, rajas, or tamas, in the layer of darkness or even of agitation, passion. All this comes from me. And the world is bound by these kind of energies, being bound by darkness or bound by desire or even bound by the sense of clarity. What is it? And so he finishes that section. He says, the whole world, this whole material realm is like a VR. And it is very, very difficult to see beyond the virtual reality. It is very difficult to see reality being encased and attached. It's like we're hugging there's some trees that have a lot of spikes on them. And we're like, help, help, help. And we're like, no, you're holding on to this thing. You're holding on to the cactus, but we're bound by it because of our deep sense of attachment. And so he says, this world is very difficult to cross beyond. Tarantite. But if someone comes to me, reaches out to me, surrenders unto me, he can easily cross beyond it. The material world is compared to be like an ocean. Difficult. Nobody can swim across the ocean. But if you surrender to God, then that water shrinks to the size of the water that's contained in the footprint of a calf. Anybody can step over that. So the oceanic entrapment becomes very, very small. So oftentimes in the Vedas, what is conventional knowledge is expressed first, and then the revelation is expressed in the second half. He says, you surrender unto me, then you can easily cross beyond it. Yes?
Since there's so many shabdas and perspectives and authorities, how do you determine which to gather your...
Correct. Very nice question. So I'll just repeat the question. Since there's so many shabda, there's so much authorities, testimonies, this is the way, we know the truth. How do we evaluate what of merit? So one thing is, before we look at the effect, we see what is given. Does it truly have reasonability? Is it making sense? The source should also be the source of intelligence. It should be intellectually sound. It should be intelligent. There are certain otherworldly effects that happen, though, in the engagement with spiritual knowledge. For example, someone says, you Hare Krishnas have Bhagavad Gītā, but I have psychedelic mushrooms, and I think that is the actual truth of life. You take psychedelic mushrooms, you understand everything. And one challenge would be, is that has anybody, through the process of taking psychedelic mushrooms, been able to give up the desire for the temporary? Does it have that transformative effect that the person is now becoming less addicted to, seeing the opposite sex, same sex as an object of their enjoyment? Have their being less addicted to enjoying sensory pursuits that do not serve them, like, say, alcohol, intoxicants? Anybody who's on any type of spiritual path, there's going to be a time of progression, but we want to see, is there actual transformation of the heart? So, for example, in the I had an example and I just lost it. Let me pick up your question and then I'll see if it comes back to me.
Yeah, no, you definitely make me think, because human beings naturally want, are pleasure seeking, right? They want to either numb pain or think that we're just here for pleasure, when whether or not you want to debate like why people suffer or not, the human experience. But people I've met across faiths who numb their problems, as we see constantly, with drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever, and then come to the realization, obviously, it's not the thing that's going to heal them. It just makes me realize that whatever journey that we are on, that we all have the work to work on ourselves. And I say that because I am a big believer, just because you claim that you're religious or spiritual doesn't mean you still don't have to do spiritual seeking. And part of that is my latest thing is just people's bias that they project. Like I walk through the world with a lot of love and peace. Mm-hmm. And my whole life in New York, I have a lot of stories of religious people projecting their hate mm-hmm. and their shame and their fears. And I even told my own religious relatives, I was like, you putting on the wig, you putting on the regalia, you putting on the cross, it doesn't mean you're excused from the work, right?
That's beautiful.
And like some people, it's a costume. Mm. And then I heard something beautiful where someone said that we're all borrowing our bodies and then our bodies are returned. So that if you are only judging and loving by the exterior, then you don't really know the soul, right? And it was like a gender inclusive moment of like, stop focusing on the outside. It's the inside that matters, but most of us, we only focus on the outside, right? Yeah. I'll just leave it with this. Like, it goes into relationships. I was studying in seminary in the old city of Jerusalem. And I guess my mom was just like thinking, like, as a young thank you. She said to me, you just really tossed that. She said to me, if you see a rose in the field, don't be quick to grab it because there are thorns. And she meant by like, don't go by based on what you find attractive, because I've met people who are beautiful on the outside and cold on the inside, right? And we've all met people who are also the opposite, right? And at the end of the day, what is going to last? The soul, the heart, or the exterior? And we all know that answer. I mean, obviously we need to be a bit attracted to the person that we're with, but this is just like, people just continue to forget when people say, I'm in love with him or her or them, or what we see on TV. And I'm like, no, it seems like you're really infatuated with their body, right? You're not always into with who they are and their soul. And I love when people like say online, I'll just leave it this, they're just like, I don't want to rush into anything. I want you to get to know me first, right? Let's see if we vibe, right? You might like what you look in online, but in person, we don't really connect. And I've had amazing relationships where the attraction wasn't so high, but it was the soul. And then people the opposite that I felt empty with. So, we need to look deeper.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was wonderful. So yes, in that book, the Screw Tape Letters, again, there's one where he is saying how the religious life can be one of the ways to keep the person away from God. The whole illusion of being better, there was one where he's saying like, the guy is praying for his mother, but when he sees his mother, he doesn't see the same person that he's praying for. He just sees this person with annoying habits. And so he's telling, okay, this demon and their whisper in the mother's ear about like all of his annoying habits. And that if he says something, always look for the intention. Don't take what it says on face value and misjudge the intention. And then for him, he says, why don't you just take what I'm saying on face value? Why are you misjudging it? So they bring out all this kind of external and not looking at like the deep, what's within. So thank you so much. Thank you. Actually, if you...
Do you want to double check that? I was worried about with the phone because it sounds some weird tech thing.
Oh, okay. My phone has been acting funny. Let's see. I think it was just a little... You can tell. Is it properly situated?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Yeah, and Bhagavad Gītā is always encouraging us. In our spiritual life, it's described in the spiritual world. When we are already free from all material conceptions and our desires are pure, at that stage, the soul is still seeking improvement. Can you imagine that? You're already free from all entanglements, but you're desiring to see that your love becomes deeper and more pure, even though you're free from selfish intent. So what to speak, like, not that I join a religion, now the work's done, but rather it's a process of deepening and deepening and deepening. Yes?
So to not, obviously there's always a debate where I hear from some people. Some people like to believe there's a little good in everyone, or some people are just inherently evil. But I'm curious for those who, for whatever reason, that they became wicked, and cold, of like how the spiritual work, gets them to a warmer place, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because like sometimes you walk around and there's, I don't even want to go into lists and labels, and you're just like, it's like some of us wake up with like certain values of how we see, and some people look to terrorize other people,
Yes.
right, and harm, and like it's beyond just psychological, and it's also their poor values, but I also feel it's something inherently rotten in their spirit that needs to be repaired.
Okay. So that brings us to our next section of the Bhagavad Gītā. Would you like to hear those verses? So we just ended on verse 14. And so this is H was for hearing. E was for energies. So the acronym is head. This is moving from head to heart. The A is for those who accept or reject divinity. And so Krishna is going to speak about this. And so he says, Namam Daskritana Mudha Prapadyante Naradama Maya Aparita Jnana Suram Bhavam Ashrita Chaturveda Vijante Mam Janasukritina Arjuna Artha Jigyasu Artha Arti Jnanicha Bharatharshava Ye Chaiva Satvika Bhava Rajashash. Oh wait, no. I just jumped to a different verse.
We're with you.
Jnana Yagyena Chapan. Nope. I might need to grab a book. Okay, I'm on 7:17. I have a few chapters memorized, but sometimes they get all mixed up because they have similar Sanskrit makeup. So this might be 7:17. We do teach classes how to, Te shamgyani nityukta eka bhaktir vishishyate priya jnanino tartamaham sachamapriya udara sarva evate jnanadvai mame matam masitasi uktatmam eva tamam gatim bahunam janmanam ante jnanavam papadyante vasudevam sarvamiti samahatma sadhurlabha. So this is a short section. He describes that there are 4 types of people who just avoid spiritual progress, they avoid divinity, they avoid personal growth. And he says, Namam Daskritana Mudha. First is what is called the Mudha. Mudha is a person who's just like a fool, the donkey is interested in working like an ass, like a donkey, because master will give grass. But grass is everywhere. But he will work and work. So somebody thinks that if I just work hard, then I can, have some sensual enjoyment at night, maybe eat something nice, I can watch this, that. And they think that this is life is for. Just need to work hard, then I'll get my enjoyment. And I just, it's like run the rat race and I'll get a little treat. And that's what life's about. So that's called the Mudha. not bright, not consciously bright. It doesn't even have to be an intellectual thing. It's more of just like a consciousness thing. Then you have somebody who may have previously some culture, but became attracted to just instant gratification and abandoned that. Then you have one is called Maya Aprahita Jnana. Maya Aprahita Jnana means somebody whose so-called intelligence, culture of information, has made them more in illusion, more in darkness, more in ignorance. You take some country boy, maybe he had some faith in divinity. Maybe he saw some spirit within nature, and then he goes to, I don't know, NYU, and he's now a total atheist.
Yeah.
Because his so-called culture of information, his so-called culturing of knowledge has made him more closed off. Maya Pritagyan, and then Asura, a person who maybe from their past life, it's a cultivation, they have a natural antagonist view towards God or divinity. And they just have, usually a lot of the agnostics out there are people who are agnostic or maybe atheistic because they're just not willing to accept horse crap. We won't say bull because that's actually sacred. So they're looking for something that makes sense, and they've been told too many things that just don't make sense. They're looking for divinity, and someone says, oh, you want to believe in divinity? Then you have to accept that 9 billion people over the last 20 years in China went to hell because they didn't pledge allegiance to the right church. They're like, no. Sorry, that does not make sense. So, and then it's like practically the only picture of divinity that is presented to them. They're like, maybe I'll wait till my next life until something that comes around kind of reasonable. And then Krishna says the types of people that begin to start coming are someone maybe is in distress, seeking wealth, like prosperity gospel. Somebody who is just kind of curious, they want to know how the world works. And then you have the jnani, a person who is a philosopher, who's looking for source, who's looking for what is everything, what is life about. These are the beginning seekers. Some of this may actually have happened in a previous life, and the person in this life, they're really seeking truth. So Krishna says, Tesham Jnani Nityuta. The jnani, the one who's seeking truth, he's the best, but all of them are good. Even if the person is a materialist, and that is what is behind their interest, their pursuit of spirituality or religion, that's fine, because what they're doing is going to reform their consciousness. So it's like, somebody is dirty, but they're in the shower, then why criticize? Someone's not coming with the best intention, but they're doing something that will reform and bring out the best form of their consciousness, then that's good. And so then he finishes this section. He says, out of many, many lifetimes of seeking, one finally comes to give themselves prapadyante, to step forward towards God. Mam prapadyante, understanding that divinity, God, is everything. Mam prapadyante vasudevam sarvamiti. And that kind of person is very rare in this world. So that ends that section. I had 2 hands up. Yes?
Talking about the 4 types of ignorances. Talking about the 4 types of ignorances in people. As you were describing that, do those type of energies come from Krishna, really? Like, is it of Krishna, or is it like just a lesson of Krishna? Like, how can you best describe it?
Perfect. Nice question. Yeah.
Because I really do love the light, and I love seeing things through the perspective of the good of Krishna.
Yes.
But the opposing forces, what are those about?
Perfect. Yeah. There's a Hindu slogan, and then there's a verse from the Bhagavad Gītā. And when you read these 2 together, they kind of sound like they're similar. They're saying the same thing, but they're very different. So the Hindu slogan is Yatamat Tatapat. That means whatever opinion there is, that is the path. You know, everything leads to the same thing. And there's a verse that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gītā, and it almost sounds like the exact same thing. And that is, Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanuvartante manushyaparta sarvasha. And that Krishna says, as someone approaches me, I respond accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So, since it's Father's Day, I thought of an analogy today. The father may give an allowance to all the kids, an equal allowance. One may use that money exploitatively, misuse it. One may invest it, or one may even buy a gift for the father. So, intelligence that comes from the heart, that is a gift from divinity. God is behind even our intelligence. He is in the heart of the atheist, giving the atheist arguments against his own existence. He is behind that path as well. But it doesn't mean it's the highest intention. So he supports the path. He supports our intentions. He is the one but it doesn't mean atheism or materialism is the highest path. Mm-hmm. But he's the only way that the thing happens because he's giving that allowance. Okay. So where the one, every path is the same kind of philosophy, is kind of saying that whatever you imagine, that is, you are now creating reality. Or Krishna says, there is a reality, and the highest expression of relation to divinity is love. There is a hierarchy. Love is the highest intention. Mm. And there are many paths that lead to love, that culminate, as Krishna just said in the previous verse, after many, many lifetimes, one comes to surrender in love. So it is inclusive in the sense that he is behind everything, but it's exclusive in the sense that love is expressed as the highest intention. So it's hierarchical inclusivity.
And in lines with that, with love, I think as spiritual seekers and people who are following this doctrine, we need to remember that when we do outreach and we do this work, it needs to be trauma-informed, right? A lot of people, myself included, have grown up into faiths where religion was used as an access to abuse and to segregate. And still to this day, like, my mother, who's an Orthodox Jew, if I by accident flick the switch light, she will be shameful and abusive. And I always questioned and struggled as a spiritual seeker. I was like, if this is God's doctrine, why are you always using fear, and hate and punishing me for making a little mistake and putting in my mind that God is the ultimate punisher, right? Yes. And that mental health problems. And I say all that because I remember going to a talk in Midtown of like some spiritual leader from like Korea. I think he followed, I don't remember the group that they call themselves, but it felt like something related to Shintoism. And like I asked this like wise leader that everyone's listening to, I said, how does one push themselves out of this, traumatized box to be able to open and receive a new word, a new faith or whatever. And he was just like simply very dismissive. He was like, oh, don't let those feelings get to you. And I'm just like, those feelings are also protecting me, right? And it's also keeping my guard down because I've seen people constantly come to use religion to police me, to being like, oh, don't think that, do this, oh, you should, and like, they'll know I'm not, and I'm even talking about here in New York City, they'll know that I'm not part of their faith, and they'll still go their way to push and judge and act, and I can't stand those people, right? And I had an argument, actually, a very heated argument with people in Washington Square Park, these Christian fundamentalists who were eventually beating people up, and I was like, this is the way that you're going about it? I said, this guy also claimed that he couldn't sin or lie because Christ was in him. And I've never heard that before. And I was like, well, you just lied. And I'm telling your friend to stop recording me and you won't. So you don't love me. That's another sin. But the point is, I just was like to him, and like for all of us to remember, there is a kind and nice and healthy way to using, outreach, and there is a brutal way that we've seen that just does not work. And I told him, I was like, this is not the way, right? And I'll just leave it with this. I had a lawyer who once said to me, religion has been mean as a use of divisiveness. Spirituality should always be free and accessible, right? Religion has been capitalized, and he wanted me to go to one of those ashrams in Hunter, New York, because it was free, but I didn't want to be what's it called, silent, to not communicate for like a week. Yeah.
Thank you. I
Thank
love
you,
all
of
this.
course.
So yes,
So
this
being
is
sensitive.
just an extension of the materialist ego. Is this idea of I, me, and my nation, my religion, my race, my. This
Whatever,
is
yeah.
it's actually on a material level. It's not on a spiritual level. Um, and the idea that we have to have, as you said, trauma informed. Krishna talks about in chapter 17 the discipline of speech, and it's actually it's an optimal of sensitivity and sensibility. Sometimes sensitivity is more important. Like if some of you were at the funeral of your friend's grandmother, and you just came to the Bhagavad Gītā class, and you come in front of everybody in that funeral and say, "Why are y'all crying? We're not the body." Well, hey, maybe that's not the time to be so. Maybe be a little more sensitive. Unless they ask you, "Hey, can you share some spiritual knowledge from Bhagavad Gītā?" Unless they kind of accept you in that kind of a role, then instead of being like this kind of stoic spiritual philosopher, just be a little more sensitive. And sometimes we're more sensible. We're not sensitive. We see some kids running in the street and we scream, we swear. We don't say, "Excuse me." We're just aggressively, "Get the hell out of the street," it's yeah. So it's like, or playing on the roof, "Get off the roof." It's so there's an optimal of Krishna. I found almost the exact acronym given in my son's sociology textbook. It just missed one of the items. So this is, he thinks it's truthful, it is helpful, it is inspiring, is it necessary, is it kind? And then Krishna says one other, he says swadaya, sourced. Meaning if you're going to speak about spiritual subjects, where's the source? Where does it come from? Where's your knowledge? Where is this something you just made up, or where is the authenticity of it? So the spiritual minded person, he thinks before he speaks. Something could be truthful, but maybe it's not even helpful. Maybe it's not kind. So we want to have this optimal, the yoga of speech. And we had one hand up. Yes.
You mentioned something earlier that said that one of the highest things was love, right? And it reminded me of something where I saw like a video, and it made me curious about what people thought about love. So now it's a lot of people, if they thought to be loved was to be understood, right? And just based off the different answers of the questions, oftentimes the answer would be based off like personal experiences, and often at the end of the day, it would be somehow not in an ugly way, but kind of tied to ego in a certain way. So what is Krishna's definition of love?
Oh, nice. Yes. Anya vilasita shunyam gyana karma vanavritam. So the highest expression of love is it's without any type of personal gain. One of the finest expressions of this is like the mother's love for her child. She doesn't. It's not like the child will do something for her that she then becomes. It's an outpouring of affection. It's not because of something. Because you do this for me. It's just a flow from the heart. Now, the thing about loving God is it's a reciprocity. You try to outlove God, then God tries to outlove you. So there's this competition between the soul and God. Who can outlove the other? So there's this reciprocity there. But the soul is never... In the beginning, he might be seeking something. But the process of this, that's the soap, that's the suds. It cleanses away the desire for gain to the point where the person just does it because they want to see that child happy. Not even for their ego, it's just for them, not for them. And you see so many examples of mothers or parents like giving up their life just for the child. Even mothers, they'll even like die in childbirth. They decide to die because they know the child will. They haven't even met the child, but this love is already there. I'm ready to give everything to you. So love is in a sense like that. It's a pure verb. It's action, but it's also pure. It's an intention. So Krishna Prabhupada, he translated the word bhakti as pure devotional service. So you got the verb service, you've got the purity, and then you've got what is it about? It's love. So there's the element of intention and action for the purpose of love. So we're quite a bit over time. So I wanted to ask, there are a few more verses in this chapter. Would you guys like to hear the end?
No.
I will take your permission. What will you say?
Amen. Yeah.
Yes? Okay. So HEAD. D stands for devas, demigods, angels. So you have we already discussed those who don't worship God, who reject God, are those who accept. But what about those who are kind of in between, who worship different figures within nature, maybe not for love, but to get stuff? Yeah. So
Like what? Sorry, just give me
you worship Shiva because you want a good husband. You worship Parvati because you want a good wife. You want a house. You want a spouse. You want a colored TV. Jaya Jagadisha Hari.
Have you ever seen that ad on, it's on 18th and 10th, I believe. It's a Manhattan mini storage, and it says, God doesn't have time for you looking for a free parking spot. They have bigger things to do.
Yeah, everyone's praying like this. Actually.
And I think everyone agrees across religion of we naturally as humans, no atheist in a foxhole, right?
Yeah.
We want to call to a higher power when things are bad, but not when it's good. Or look at the hidden message.
When it's good, we take credit.
Yeah.
When it's bad, we blame.
I've even self-reflected with me for the times I'm like, give me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm one of 8 billion people. All these people, of course, want to have money and this and that, but if I have more for me, it means less for the next person.
That's
who say I'm special.
That's why the characteristic of the Brahmana, the traditional Vedic philosopher or priest, is that they move through this world that I will do what's within my God-given nature, the talents of it, and whatever money that comes, that's what's in my cards. I'm not going to. Is that? Oh, there you go. I'm not going to. Like the Brahmanas, actually traditionally the priests in ancient India, they would not take salaries. The doctors in ancient India would not take a salary. They would only accept donations. They would serve the poor and the rich, everybody equally. The priests, the doctors, the philosophers, they would serve everybody equally because they had the faith that whatever money I deserve per my karma is going to come to me anyways. I just have to do what is I have to put my God-given talents and hard work, and whatever comes is going to come. Just like distress already comes to you, isn't it? You have to work for distress to come. It's going to come. Happiness is going to come also. It's going to come. So that's the faith of the Brahmana. He doesn't need an employer. He knows, I just do what I'm supposed to do, and whatever I need, whatever I deserve is going to come. So we'll finish this last section. Kamasastir hitagyana prapadyante na devata tam tamimam ashtaya prakatini tasvaya yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shara architam ichiti tashacharam shadham dhamaiva vidyamyaham sataya sharaya yuktas tasararanam ihate lavate tatha kaman mamaiva vihitan hitan antavattu palam te shantad bhavati apamedasam Deva Deva Yajo Yanti Man Bhakti Yanti Mamapi Avyaktam Apapanam Avyaktam Vaktim Apapanam Manyate Mama Buddhaya Param Bhavaman Jananto Mama Buddha Maheshwaram Mama Buddha Maheshwaram. Oh, where I'm jumping to the 9th chapter in my head, and I know that's not the right next one. The next one is Naham Prakasya Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavitaha Mudayo Navajanati Lokamam Ajam Aviyam Vedaham Samatitani Vardmanani Charjana Bhavishyani Bhutani Mamtavedina Kashana Ichadvesha Shamutena Dwandamahina Bharata Sabhutani Sarvabhutani Samoham Sagiyanti Parantapa Yesham Tatakatam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam Vedwandamoha Nirmukta Vajante Mam Diridavrata
No matter what you say, we believe you.
Jarna Marna Mukshaya Mashanta Yatanti Ted Brahma Kisham Ayatmak Machakti Sarivadi Devamam Sadayaga Chavedi Pranikalave Pimam Tevidu Chetasaha Om Tatsarati Srimad Bhagavad Gītā Supana Sastru Brahmavadyayam Yoga Sastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Jnana Yogo Saptamodhyayaha. So that's the end of chapter 7. Krishna says, you heard this word earlier, Shrita means to take. As we said, someone whose knowledge is taken away by so-called education. The illusion takes away their knowledge. So here is another one where a person's knowledge is taken away by desire, kama. You heard of Kama Sutra, probably the most popular Vedic book out there. It's actually a book about marriage and so many other things. But kama means desire. And Krishna says one whose desire has taken away their intelligence, they actually become directed to worship various angels, devatas. Not the daityas, not the demons, but the angels. And he says, Kamasasir hitagyana prapadyantina devata tam tamimashta prakatina yo yo yam yam tanubhakta shada architam. And I give them their faith. And I give them the result. Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shada architam ichitita shada shanam tamay vividyamyam. I give them the faith and I give them the result. Sataya shadaya yuktas tasararam idate lavate tatamamai fahim. So they're actually worshiping me, my agents, but not directly, not correctly. They're worshiping the agents, but they're not understanding who's behind the agents. And I'm directing because they don't have the highest intention. I'm not putting them on the highest connection. But he says not only the result, but the faith. I'm even providing the faith that they have. Antavattu palam tesham. Palam, we have this word phala in Hindi. Phal, fruit. And Sanskrit is phala. One who wants, who he has little bit, not so much intelligence. Swalpa medasam. Doesn't have too much intelligence. What do they want? Perishable fruits. And therefore they approach all these angels for perishable things. Give me a wife and a HD TV. Jaya Jagadish Hari. So there's a lot of, actually the Vedas are dealing on this level. Very materialistic, very short-sighted. Krishna says, Idam pushpitam bacham. Don't be distracted by all these flowery promises of the Vedas. Although it is religious, it is materialistic. Don't get distracted. Every religion has this. Because people Most people are materialistic. A child may clean out, you talked about fear. This is the lowest level of religious inspiration. A child may clean the room out of fear. I'm going to get beaten. A child may clean the room out of profit. Allowance, or girls coming over. Some gain is there. A child may clean the room out of gratitude. But the best is an outpouring of affection. That's the highest. So he said, inclusive, but there's a hierarchy of intention.
Would you consider scrolling and doing time pass as a form of desire?
Scrolling?
Yeah, like Instagram scrolling.
Oh yeah, that's going to feed the desire even more and more and more. So we got to pick who we follow. Maybe unfollow the ones that are not helping us. You know, all the handsome guys, maybe unfollow. All the things that keep us distracted, maybe unfollow and follow the right ones.
There's a Nigerian filmmaker who says we are what we watch, you know, and how people can easily be manipulated for good or for bad.
Absolutely.
You know, towards hating, let's say, a group of people if they keep consuming. And as someone who has a media and gender studies background, most people project in real life what they see certain marginalized identities as characters.
Yeah.
So when they see you or you, they're not always seeing you, they're seeing the representation of you.
Absolutely.
That is being depicted to them, that is often dehumanizing in America or elsewhere. So, you know, we need to break out of that and remember that we're seeing a person, we're not seeing a character.
And then, yes, we would say that most sufficient way is to start to see the soul behind the layers of identity. This is a soul. It's samatvam, equal to, we are all actually, metaphysically we're equal. Physically we're different. Nobody, if we're talking on a material level, nobody has any type of unity. Even twins are different. Unity, equality, these are metaphysical concepts. And they only work with a metaphysical basis. They don't work without metaphysical philosophy. There's a sentiment there, but we have to have a philosophy that backs it up. And so Krishna says, and then those who, he says in the next verse, and those also are not very conscious, they may think that divinity is amorphous, it has no personhood, no personality. Think avyakta vyakta papana manyate mambudaya. That some people may have think, now I've become, that Krishna has become a person. But divinity is not less than us. It has its own individuality. And we are like sparks of that fire. We are like rays of that sunshine. We share quality, but we are not quantitatively the same. And so then we'll see where we're at. I think we can stop here. We've gone on for a sufficient amount of time. We read all the verses. We can't say every single point from all the verses because then we'll go for a little bit way too much. But we thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to Bhagavad Gītā chapter 7. I'll be teaching a class in July and also in August. If you want to learn these chapters by heart, you want to memorize Sanskrit and English and understand every single word, we'll teach you. And so you can come to me if you want to learn those things. And so we'll stop here and we'll have a very short kirtan. So we can all get up, we can roll up this rug and we'll have a very short kirtan and then we'll serve you a delicious dinner right here. So Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Hare Krishna.